He's gonna grow like some model, I muttered into Marshy's fur, clinging to it like a lifeline. I swear the female lead of this novel is damn lucky to have him. A glorious disaster. Walking perfection. Sword-wielding heartbreak. I'm suffering. Talking about me, Lavi? I jerked up like I'd just been electrocuted by the ghost of etiquette, my entire soul flinging itself into panic mode. Osric was suddenly there, right beside Marcia, wiping sweat from his brow with a towel that should honestly be confiscated for crimes against hormonal stability. He looked confused. Innocent. Like he hadn't just committed a visual felony by being that handsome in public spaces. No. I squawked way too loud like a chicken being startled mid-lay. I mean, yes, but not like that. I was talking to Marcia. About the weather. And politics. And then, Mars. He blinked. Mars. Yep. Big red angry planet. Very warm. Kind of like you. No, not like you. You're not a planet. You're just very, sorty. Yes. Sorty. Please bury me in Marshy's fluff. Immediately. Make it my royal tomb. Carve she died as she lived, awkward and sparkling on the stone. To his absurd credit, Osric didn't laugh. He just tilted his head, that adorably confused puppy expression in full force, and said, "You okay, Lavi?" Oh no. Now he sounds mature too. He's growing up. His voice is deeper. He's got cheekbones. A literal protagonist jawline. Is that emotional nuance I hear? I'm fine. I chirped, hopping off Marcia with the grace of a stunned squirrel falling out of a tree. Totally fine. Just came to see you. As friends. Very normal. Like, absolutely non-obsessed with your face. Yep. Friends. He smiled. And said, "Shall we go sit at our usual spot?" I nodded so fast I nearly gave myself a royal whiplash and followed him toward the bench. The bench of platonic proximity. Our sacred spot is shaded by a dreamy silverleaf tree and exactly 13.2 feet away from the sparring grounds. We sat down. He looked at me, still smiling like some ancient Greek deity of sunshine and emotional stability, and said, "I heard you've started lessons with Lady Evelyn?" I nodded. "Yeah. I did." "You're growing up, Lavi," he said warmly. "Hi." Stop smiling, man. Why is he smiling like that? Why is there a main character glow around him? This isn't fair. He's sparkling. Sparkling with puberty and plot relevance. I'm not supposed to be the heroine here. I squinted at him like he'd committed some divine-level offense. "Oh gosh," I muttered, shielding my eyes with my hand like I was staring into the sun. "Stop blinding me, for God's sake." He blinked. "Huh. What do you mean?" I blurted out without brain-to-mouth filtration, "You're glowing too handsomely." And just like that, awkward silence fell upon us like a royal tax audit. His cheeks flushed. Not just pink. Not, "Oh, I'm a little embarrassed" pink. We're talking sunset petal strawberry smoothie panic red. I need a shovel. I need to bury myself. I need a portal to a different timeline. Why does my mouth keep doing this? Why can't I speak like a normal future empress? Why am I like this? Time to activate emergency topic diversion no number 002. Cute animals. I heard there are snow foxes in our empire," I blurted. Osric, mercifully grabbing onto the new topic like a lifeline, nodded. "Yes. In the northern region, we have the empire's largest snow fox sanctuary." "Wow." I gasped, eyes turning into literal anime stars. Marshy's ears twitched. His tail, which had been elegantly draped to the left, thwacked to the right like someone had mentioned his ancient, adorable rivals. I narrowed my eyes at him. "Don't get jealous. You're still my number one giant majestic fluff monster." Turning back to Osric, I leaned in. "Have you seen them?" He nodded again, smiling that gentle night soft boy smile that made the temperature rise 10 degrees. I visit the north once a year. I see them often." "Wait, what? He visits the north? Since when? Why, how come that was never in the—" "They're fast," he continued, his voice quiet. "Hard to spot unless you're very still. They're beautiful. Ghost-like." "Really?" I asked, enchanted. He nodded. Then I tilted my head. "But why do you visit the north?" And that's when the air changed. His shoulders stiffened. Yes, those shoulders, the ones that had been personally responsible for my mental derailment 20 minutes ago. The ones I was going to sue for emotional damage. His eyes lost their shine. He looked down, his hands folding in his lap like he needed something to hold on to. My mother was from the north, he said softly. She grew up near Fox Ridge Valley. I blinked. That hit like a snowball. Right to the soul. His mother. Wait. Hold the royal teacup. I've read this novel. I know this novel. And not once. Not in the glossary, not in the tragic flashbacks, not in the villain backstories. Not once was Osric's mother ever mentioned, even though he was the main lead of this novel. It's like she was erased. From the narrative. From his life. From the entire plotline. Why? But wait. That wasn't the only weird thing, was it? I sat back stunned. My engagement. I was supposed to be engaged to Osric. There was a whole plot arc. A political alliance. An arranged engagement. Royal tension. I was supposed to beam in a hallway at the announcement. There was supposed to be a celebration. But it never happened. Not a whisper. Not a mention. Not even an accidental gossip in the garden like, oh ho hope, I heard Princess Lavinia and Sir Osric. Nothing. It's like someone hit delete on that entire subplot. Wait. Did Papa do something? Did he delete the engagement lines straight from the author's outline? Anyhow, that's not what's on my mind now. It's about Osric's mother. I glanced at him. He was quiet now. Not stiff like before but thoughtful. Like he was looking at a memory that had no photograph to go with it. Why, who was she never mentioned? Not once in the entire book. No tragic monologue. No locket holding her picture. No sad "my mother died giving birth to me" trope that makes the readers go aw and the main character go broody. Just nothing. Not even a name. Even I got a tragic backstory. My mother died giving birth to me. Tear-jerking. Very page one, very heroine core. Grandpa Thalion wrote sonnets about it. But Osric? Nothing. It's like his mother was a blank page. A character that was never allowed to be written. Royal Dining Hall, 7:03 p.m., danger level, high. Dinner. A sacred time. A blessed hour. A moment for chicken, steamed dumplings, delicious desserts and emotional healing. Except apparently, not tonight. Because tonight my royal dinner was seasoned not with salt or saffron, but with unholy fatherly judgment. I could feel it. Papa's eyes. Boring into my soul like twin catapults launching flaming arrows of eyeing something. My spoon shook as I lifted a bite of potato something stew. I didn't know what the something was, and at this point it was probably guilt. I chewed. Papa didn't. He just stared. Lips tight. Brows furrowed. That same terrifying expression he wears when dealing with tax evaders or suspicious suitors. Papa. I tried, side-eyeing him through a mouthful of trauma stew. Did the royal chef accidentally dump the entire kingdom's salt reserves onto your plate? Pause. Then, with a voice carved from stone and ancient fatherly disappointment, he replied. No. I blinked. Then why aren't you eating? And before I could add, are you on a cleanse or something? He snatched my plate. I gasped. A full royal gasp. Offended. Betrayed. Starving. Am I dumplings? I yelped, reaching dramatically like they were my fallen comrades. Papa. That's a diplomatic offense. Papa slammed the plate down in front of him and leaned forward, arms crossed like a cross-examining god. Don't you think, he said slowly, dangerously, you have something to tell me? The entire room went still. Even the soup paused mid-simmer. I stared at him. Blink. Error 404. Memory not found. Think Lavinia. Think, what could a charming, sweet, slightly chaotic 7-year-old princess like me possibly have done wrong? I mean, today was pretty normal, right? I only rode Marsha inside the palace once. Twice. And technically it was a hallway. That's not illegal. I think. Papa still hadn't looked away. His stare was practically drilling into my royal soul like he had X-ray vision powered by pure concentrated disappointment. I squirmed in my seat. Tried to butter my bread. Dropped the knife. Sighed. Papa, I said sweetly, folding my hands like I was posing for a stained glass window painting. Is this about accidentally breaking your favorite pot in your study? His eyes narrowed so sharply they could slice bread. What happened to the pot? Nothing, I said too fast, voice 12 octaves too high. Absolutely nothing. I fell. Because of the wind. There are no windows in my study. Then maybe it was a ghost? A silence followed. The kind of silence that feels like it has teeth. Papa inhaled deeply, like he was summoning every ounce of royal patience passed down from generations of annoyed monarchs. I tried again. Okay, wait. Was it the time I glued all the royal seals together to make a friendship bracelet? His expression didn't change. At this point, I wasn't even sure he had expressions anymore or if they all got packed away in some emergency why me box. Or when I, maybe, sneaked out of the royal gate for one teeny tiny second? Knuckle tap. Knuckle tap. Oh no. You went out of the royal gate? Oops. I've been caught. My spoon stopped stirring. My soul left my body. Marcia, under the table, gave me the emotional support snort of a tired alpaca. Papa tilted his head up to the ceiling like he was praying. Or calculating how many guards he'd need to glue me to the floor for a week. Papa, I said earnestly, leaning forward with my most sincere war crime innocent face, you're going to have to narrow it down. I do at least 7 questionable things a day. He opened his mouth, probably to say my full royal name in all its syllabic horror, but I beat him to it. Oh God, I blurted, panic rising like bad soup. Did you find out I told the king of Nivali that he looked like a roasted turnip with big ears? Pause. Papa blinked. And then his lips twitched. He does look like that, he muttered, eyes gleaming. I gasped. I know, right? I didn't mean to say it out loud, it just popped out. I bumped into him during the birthday banquet, looked up and boom. Vegetable face. I apologized later. He laughed. Papa nodded and then, the stare continued. Ugh. If it's not the broken pot, not the gate, not the turnip king, then what? What in the queen's frilly curtains could I possibly have done this time to deserve the look? I stared at him. He stared at me. My brain was buffering. Still buffering. Lavinia's POV, the royal dining table of doom, continued. My brain was buffering harder than a crystal ball on dial-up. Papa's stare hadn't budged. Not an inch. Not even a blink. At this point I was 97% sure he'd trained with the royal statues on how to glare judgmentally without moving a single eyebrow hair. Me? Oh, I was spiraling. Dramatically. Elegantly. Like a doomed opera heroine in a gown made of bad decisions. Was this the part where he'd pull out a scroll and start reciting my sins like a holy exorcist? Would fire rain from the chandeliers? Would a town crier burst in yelling, Lavinia of House Dramatis, you stand accused? I cleared my throat like a very innocent princess and attempted the ancient art of distraction through dessert. So, dessert? Nothing. I offered a polite, hopefully unbanishable smile. Would you care for some royal plum pudding, your grumpiness? Or maybe a lovely bowl of, please don't ground me for life, forgiveness cookies? Still nothing. He leaned back in his throne-like chair, probably carved from the bones of past misbehaving royals, and said in a tone so regal it made my mashed potatoes rethink their existence. I received some news today. From Lionel. News? What kind of news? Your daughter has joined a crime syndicate kind? Or the Lavinia lit the library curtains on fire again kind? And then he said the words that slapped my soul with a feather duster of horror. He told me you called Osric handsome. And, his exact words, not mine, your cheeks flushed pink. I went full blue screen of death. Like no thoughts, head empty, just birds chirping and one lone unicorn tap dancing inside my skull. Excuse me? I knew it. I knew Lionel was one of those nosy, drama-hungry palace aunties who could spread gossip faster than a sneeze in a throne room. Forget 5G. Lionel runs on which Wi-Fi? Papa narrowed his eyes and added with terrifying calm, I hope your cheeks flushed because of heat, my dear daughter. Why does my dear daughter sound ominous? Then the stare. The silence. The holy pressure of 10 ancestors judging me from heaven. I swallowed hard. And then, I don't know what demon possessed me, I decided to tell the truth. No. It's true. Osric is really growing handsome, Papa. I had barely finished the sentence before Papa snapped his head toward Ravik and barked, tell Theon to ban Osric from entering the imperial palace. Oh, I'll weigh it. Ban. I choked on my dignity. What? Why would he ban Osric? Who would I tease? Who would I emotionally scar with awkward compliments and accidental flirting? I gasped, full Shakespeare mode. Papa, don't you think you're going a bit too far? He didn't even blink. He just went full final boss voice and said, no. No? I glared at him. He glared back. This was now a glare-off. The floor was judging us. Even the mashed potatoes were tense. I was such an idiot. I forgot that beneath all that fatherly love and cuddly arms, Papa was also, oh right, the crazy tyrant of the empire. But Papa, I tried again in my most reasonable royal tone. What's wrong with praising someone who's objectively, devastatingly handsome? His jaw twitched. Dangerously. Like volcano about to erupt levels of twitch. Because, he growled, that's exactly how that stupid thing called love starts. And I don't want my daughter getting involved in that nonsense. My thrones. Seriously. He was already auditioning for the role of villain of my love life, and I hadn't even had my first romantic moment yet. Like, hello. Not a stolen glance, not a dreamy montage, not even a single slow-motion hair flip. And when, may I ask, did I say I was in love with Osric? All I did was praise his handsomeness, which for the record is a public service. That's it. Desperate times call for the ultimate weapon. The Adorabomb. I widened my eyes, dialed up the sparkle and summoned my cutest, most sugar-drenched innocent face. But Papa, I only love you. Cue sparkles. Star-shaped stars. Explosions of glitter. I'd never love Osric. You're my number one, my only, my fluffy emperor of the universe. He looked at me, still not convinced. His eye twitched suspiciously. Don't act innocent, Lavinia. Your puppy face doesn't work on me. Darn it. He'd built immunity. But, puppy face? What is that, Papa? I batted my lashes so violently, a nearby candle gave up and flickered out. Even Marsher, who had been happily licking his plate clean and swishing his tail like a culinary critic in heaven, paused mid-lick to squint at me. His fluffy expression practically screamed, "She is guilty, Your Majesty." A sinner. An adorable, fluttering-lashed sinner. Ravik and Nanny were behind him, visibly struggling, not with duty, but with the monumental effort of not bursting into laughter. Ravik had his fist pressed to his mouth like he was mourning a fallen soldier, while Nanny's shoulders were shaking so hard she looked like a teapot about to whistle. Meanwhile Papa? He sliced through the air like he was dodging anime sparkles with a royal butter knife. Completely immune. Level 9 99 anti-cuteness shield. Why was he dodging my love missiles? Time for the final nuke. Papa, it's true, I whispered, clutching my heart dramatically. I don't love Osric. I love you the most in the whole world. No, the whole galaxy. No, wait, the entire unicorn multiverse. I'm gonna marry you when I grow up. And just like that, Papa paused. The tyrant melted. He looked smug. Smugger than a cat on a throne of cream. He raised one brow and smirked. I see. Then, as if he'd just unlocked the secret to the universe, he muttered under his breath. I forgot. My daughter doesn't even know what love and marriage are yet. Excuse me? I know everything, thank you very much. I've read 5.5 romance scrolls and 2 forbidden storybooks in my past life, and I once overheard Morella sobbing to her teacup about a man named Lupert. I'm practically an expert. This was the only way. The only method strong enough to crack through the royal titanium that is Papa's overprotective skull. So yes, I had to do it. I had to throw the ultimate weapon. Mission: Adorabomb. Status: nuclear success. Target hit. Ego disarmed. Emperor melting. I should have thrown confetti. Lit fireworks. Declared a national holiday in the name of Lavinia's supreme tactical cuteness victory. Because clearly the bomb had landed and Papa's walls had crumbled like soggy royal pastries. And just look at him now, smirking like he'd conquered the northern tribes single-handedly with a butter knife and a grudge. I mean, excuse me? Who let my father be this handsome, this powerful, and this completely whipped by a single pout? He was a tyrant emperor, feared across continents, the kind who made generals shiver and poets cry. And yet, the moment his daughter called some other guy handsome, he pulled a full-on soap opera spiral and banned the poor boy from the palace. Who does that? Whose father does that? Oh right. Only my Papa could be this gloriously dramatic. It was strange, wasn't it? At first, when I landed in this world and became this Lavinia, I braced myself to live like the original one, forgotten, ignored, poisoned by the third act. The typical tragic daughter in a royal tragedy. I never expected attention, let alone affection. I didn't come here to win his heart. And yet he gave it freely. Despite his stone-carved scowl and scary warlord aura, Papa never once hesitated to be there for me. He didn't just do the father thing, he lived it. Fiercely. Like he was trying to rewrite the script of his own dark, twisted family history, just so I wouldn't have to suffer the same. No. I get it. I get what it means to be loved. In my past life, when I used to stare at other people's families like they were rare butterflies I'd never be allowed to catch, I used to wonder, what does it feel like to be protected? To be spoiled? To be adored just because you exist? No. Now I know. And maybe, just maybe, I am a little spoiled. Maybe I'm the universe's favorite daughter, gifted a grumpy, overprotective emperor for a dad with zero chill and a scary scowl. And I wouldn't trade him for anything. So without a second thought, I jumped off the chair like a human firework and ran straight to him. I love you so much, Papa. I squealed, squeezing like my life depended on it. He blinked, stunned, probably expecting another bribe or pudding request. But then his expression softened into that rare melt-your-heart smile. He ruffled my hair like he was trying to mess it into next week and said with all the warmth in the world, "I love you more, my little monster," he muttered, eyes soft and voice deep. I giggled like a happy gremlin and buried my face in his robes. The great tyrant of the empire had been defeated by love, affection, and one dangerously adorable daughter. He may be a tyrant, but more importantly, he was my papa. My home. My world. Lavinia's POV, the royal study room. After the wildly successful mission where I launched my Adorabomb at Papa and reduced the royal dining room to a puddle of feelings and glitter, I naively believed that everything would go back to normal. You know, sunshine, pastries, and occasionally spending time and playing with Osric. But alas, I was wrong. So very royally, epically wrong. Because ever since that day, Papa had initiated a new operation. Let's call it, mission. Keep my daughter away from that devilishly handsome boy named Osric. It began subtly. Like today. There I was, walking through the royal courtyard with the bounce of someone about to meet her dearest friend Osric and chat about everything from morning chaos to the tragedy of my daily homework quota. But just as I was about to cross the hallway to the west wing, poof, up popped Thean. With his eternal eye bags. Gaha! I screeched, clutching Marcia like a fluffy shield. From the hedges, a bunch of hidden knights leapt down from the sky like overly dramatic ninja pigeons. "Stay back, princess," one of them barked, nearly tripping over a rose bush. My head popped out from behind Marcy's fluff. And there he was, Thean, the living embodiment of stress. He stared at me like someone who had witnessed the fall of empires and still had 10 unread scrolls to file. "Your Highness," he said flatly. "His Majesty has summoned you." I slapped my chest dramatically. "Thean, can you not appear like a cursed ghost for 1 second?" He sighed like a man who'd sold his soul for a paycheck. "Your father dumps all his paperwork on me and doesn't even allow time for basic human respiration. Do you think I qualify as a normal human anymore?" Then protest. A dangerous glint sparked in his tired eyes. "But he pays me triple my usual salary." I opened my mouth but nothing came out. There were no words in the ancient tongue of mortals for the betrayal I felt in that moment. You greedy little quill rat." He smiled with all the soullessness of someone too rich to care. "So, princess, shall we go? His Majesty has summoned you." I blinked. "Right now?" "Yes, princess," Thean replied with the solemnity of a funeral bell. My eyes drifted longingly toward the training grounds, where Osric probably stood, blissfully unaware, sword swinging in slow motion like a battle-hardened ballet dancer under the sun. His hair likely glistened. His jaw probably clenched. Somewhere I was sure birds were chirping an Osric-only soundtrack. But I tried, clinging to hope like a desperate side character in a tragic romance. Thean of course didn't blink. "The Emperor insists." Cue. Dramatic violin screech in my mental background score. Let me just say, this wasn't a one-time thing. Oh no. This had officially become my new cursed royal routine. Every single time I tried to see Osric. His Majesty has summoned you. The Emperor requests your presence. The Grand Tyrant demands to crush your romantic aspirations with an iron boot. Okay, that last one was just the vibe. At first I was innocent. Naive. Wow. What a coincidence. Papa sure is clingy today. But after the sixth suspiciously timed interruption, I knew. Papa wasn't summoning me because of royal matters. Oh no. He was strategically sabotaging my social life. I see what you're doing, soon-to-be old man, I whispered to the sky one evening, clutching my pillow. You're making sure. I distance myself from my only friend, Osric. Because if I couldn't even casually wave at a handsome boy in the hallway, then what about my future? My love life? What happens when I actually fall in love? When do I want to get married? Will Papa lock me in the tower like some overdramatic fairy tale father and challenge my suitor to a duel? Suddenly the visions of my future changed. No slow dancing at midnight under enchanted chandeliers. No heartfelt letters scented with lavender. No accidental hand brushes during tea. Just single. Forever. Like my past life. At this rate Papa and I would grow old together. Both broody, both stubborn, and both forever alone. Royal Bachelor and Daughter Edition. Then, shall we begin, Princess? I blinked out of my dramatic spiral and looked up. There she was, Teacher Levlin, in her signature lavender robes and the calm patience of someone who had definitely taught royalty long enough to survive 100 tantrums and at least 3 assassination attempts. Right. Royal classroom. Not my diary. I nodded, adjusting my royal butt on the plush velvet chair, and nodded, sure. She smiled. So, last time we studied the Eastern region. I perked up. Yes. We studied about how the Eastern nobles eat spicy stew for breakfast and believe horses can sense lies. Levlin chuckled. And do you remember what the Eastern region is famous for? Silk tea and highly suspicious ponies? I offered. Correct, she said, though she was clearly holding back laughter. Honestly, I still hadn't recovered from that story she told. Apparently, in one Eastern province, a noble's marriage proposal was once rejected because the horse looked uncomfortable during the engagement ceremony. Lies, betrayal, and one deeply judgmental stallion. I guess I was right. My people are way more dramatic than me. I'm not even in the top 10, and that's honestly kind of insulting. Today, Teacher Levlin said, smoothing out her robe with that poised grace she always carried, I'll let you decide, Princess. Would you like to study the northern region or the southern? Northern region, I answered immediately. Too fast. My mouth moved before my brain even caught up. Even Marcia raised his head in quiet judgment. Teacher Levlin tilted her head. May I ask why, Princess? Is it because of the snow foxes? Well, 50% yes. And the other 50? I held her gaze and replied, because Osric's mother is from there, isn't she, teacher? That stopped her. Just for a second her posture stiffened. Her eyes darted away. The quill she held stilled in her hand. Then she blinked and gave a tight smile. You've been doing your reading. I'm observant, I said. And curious. Then she straightened her shoulders. All right, she said quietly. Let's cover the northern region today. Victory? Perhaps. I offered a small smile and she began. The northern provinces are surrounded by thick forests and snow-covered plains. Winters stretch forever and summers last maybe 2 days if they're lucky. I gasped. How do they survive? With grit. And soup. Lots of soup. Makes sense. They're ruled less by nobility and more by old clan alliances, she continued. Each family holds its own power. Bloodlines are sacred. Honor is a currency. Insults last for generations, sometimes longer than people. Sounds intense. It is. That's why they worship the god Carvon, the Iron Wolf. I sat up straighter. Iron Wolf? That sounds extremely metal. Levlin raised a brow. That's because he is. Quite literally. According to legend, he was forged from the last star before it fell from the sky. He governs strength, survival, and silent endurance. I squinted. So basically he's the god of not whining. Precisely. I leaned back, sighing dramatically. I could never make it in the north. I complain if my bathwater is a degree too cold. You'd last 3 hours, she said without blinking. Bold of you to assume I'd even get past the city gates. That earned another quiet chuckle from her. Each region has its own deity, princess. It's how culture, customs, and politics evolved across the empire. I tilted my head. Wait, does that mean we have one too? She nodded. We do. Eltharis, the Swan Queen. I blinked. Oh. Eltharis governs clarity, grace, and justice. She's said to bless those who carry the burden of ruling, Teacher Levlin said gently. Wow. I whispered. And for a fleeting second I actually felt holy, like I should wear white. Or float. Now I suddenly wanted to visit a temple. Light a candle. Whisper a prayer. Maybe do a small dignified twirl. But then reality smacked me in the face. Specifically the reality shaped like Papa. He'd never let me go. No temples, he'd say. Too many stairs. Too many people. Too many chances to trip and fall into danger or a vat of sacred oil. And honestly, the VAT part was probably fair. So yeah, no temples for me. Figures, I muttered under my breath. Teacher Levlin didn't hear. She was back to her scroll. Currently, Lord Theron Aerith governs the north under the command of His Majesty Emperor Cassius, she said. I nodded, soaking in the knowledge. And then the thought struck me. Then, I started slowly, which clan does Osric's mother belong to? The oldest, she said simply. And the ruling one. Clan Aerith. I blinked. As in, that Aerith? Yes, princess. So she meant that Osric's mother was basically the ruler's daughter? From the ancient, snowy, fox-blessed, elbow-deep in soup, honor-obsessed ruling family of the north? I stared at Teacher Levlin, my brain short-circuiting. This felt illegal. She should have mentioned it at least in one paragraph in the novel. Why wasn't she ever mentioned? Then, I leaned forward, my voice low. Where is she now? Did she die? There was a beat of silence. A flicker passed over Teacher Levlin's face. Not sadness exactly, something heavier. And then she smiled. Soft. Measured. No, princess, she said, her voice quiet. She is alive. I blinked. Alive. I repeated. Well then, why haven't I ever seen her? I asked. Because, she said, her tone shifting ever so slightly, she abandoned Lord Osric when he was only 2 years old. Everything in me froze. I didn't even blink. What? I said, my voice barely a whisper. My eyes widened, heartbeat thumping in my ears. Osric had been abandoned? Princess, Teacher Levlin said softly, we should continue. But I didn't answer. Because in that moment, I wasn't just Lavinia Devereux of the Elorian Empire. I was a girl who just found out her best friend had been left behind. And the world would never look quite the same again. Lavinia's POV, Royal Chambers. My head rested on Papa's arm as he read through yet another impossibly long scroll. My cheeks squished slightly against his solid muscles. Ugh, unfair. Even his biceps felt like they did push-ups while signing decrees. His scent, warm, familiar, like parchment, polished steel, and something faintly sweet, possibly royal stress sweat and sugar almonds, wrapped around me like a safety net I had no intention of escaping from. He didn't speak. Just let me stay there, curled against him like a lazy, emotionally unstable cat in silk. His other hand occasionally reached up and stroked my hair, gently and rhythmically, and he didn't even realize he was doing it. And I didn't remind him. Not because I was too comfortable, but because I needed it. I needed this. The warmth. The quiet. The closeness. The fragile illusion that maybe, just maybe, the world still had some softness left. Across the room, Theon, our eternally tired royal advisor and walking embodiment of tax season, sat buried in scrolls with ink-stained hands and no will to live. He didn't even look up when he said, Your Majesty, Lord Havatha's trade report is 2 weeks overdue. Also, the river patrols are demanding extra funding after the crocodile incident. Papa didn't blink. Tell them to build a bridge. There is a bridge, Theon replied, dry as stale toast. Then tell them to cross it and stop complaining. Theon stared and sighed as he scribbled something like crocodiles equals character building and continued working without comment. Meanwhile, Papa's hand suddenly stilled in my hair. No more stroking. Rude. Instinctively, without even thinking, I reached up, grabbed his hand and plopped it right back on my head like it belonged there. Because it did. Obviously. That's when he finally looked down at me. Not with the eyes of an emperor. Just, confused, concerned, slightly amused, wondering, what's wrong with her again? He raised an eyebrow, picked up another scroll and asked dryly, "What's the matter, little beast? Why aren't you rolling around and making a dramatic mess like usual?" I gave him a side glance, my expression scrunched somewhere between sullen and wistful. "I don't feel like it." Then I pressed his hand firmer onto my head. "Just keep stroking my hair, Papa." He didn't say anything to that. Didn't ask again. Just obliged, like it was the easiest thing in the world to offer comfort without questions. And for a little while I just lay there, cocooned in warmth and silence. Then of course Thien had to open his mouth. "Looks like our little princess is upset about something," he said, his voice far too casual for someone in the presence of an emotional crisis. I glanced at him briefly, gave him my best flat glare, and then snuggled even deeper into Papa's side like I was trying to disappear into his royal robes. Papa stared at me for a moment. Then he slowly turned his cold, imperial gaze toward Thien like he was personally responsible for my entire emotional state. "If you're done being observant," Papa said icily, "then get lost." Thien narrowed his eyes, teeth grinding. "Do you think I want to be here? I want to sleep too, Your Majesty." "Then get the hell out of my chamber," Papa roared as if Thien had just insulted his bloodline and committed treason all at once. Honestly, the acoustics in this chamber deserved applause. So much dramatic echo. Thien threw his hands up and started storming off, muttering under his breath about tyrants and unpaid overtime. But then, as if the gods themselves had nudged him mid-stride, he paused, spun around and said, "Oh, right. I forgot to inform you." Papa groaned like the ceiling had just collapsed on his soul. "Of course you did." Thien grinned. "Marquis Everett has adopted a son." Marquis Everett. Whenever I hear his name my royal blood starts boiling. Papa squinted. "Marquis Everett? That withered old garden gnome's still alive." Thien nodded, flipping through one of his scrolls. "Yes, surprisingly. Apparently he found himself a child and now wishes to formally introduce him to his Imperial Majesty for blessings, approval and potentially a title." His words, not mine. Papa stared at Thien as if he'd just declared a revolution. "A son." "Yes," Thien replied, his voice completely flat. "A small human male. Age unclear. Origin suspicious. Probably an orphan or a cabbage seller. Who knows? He wants a meeting." Papa scoffed. "What does he think I am? A saint?" "No," Thien said without missing a beat. "An emperor." There was a brief, glorious silence. Then Papa sighed, leaned back like the weight of the throne was poking his spine again and said, "Fine. Let's meet this cabbage boy." He smirked. "Slow and dangerous. Let's see what that old geezer has pulled from his retirement hat." Thien gave a deep, exaggerated bow. "As Your Majesty wishes. I shall schedule the royal meeting." Then he turned on his heel and swept out, muttering something about tyrants and unpaid therapy sessions. Papa sighed like an entire empire was sitting on his lungs, then glanced down at me, his fingers still tangled gently in my hair. "So," he said, his voice softer now, "what's been upsetting you?" I went silent for a beat, then laid my cheek against his chest and mumbled, "It's about Osric." Papa twitched. "That boy." He sighed, shoulders tensing ever so slightly. "What about him?" I tilted my head up. "I heard his mother abandoned him, Papa. Is that true?" Papa didn't answer at first. He just stared into the fire like it owed him money. Then, with a sigh that could crack a mountain in half, he asked, "So that's what's been chewing on your little brain?" I nodded. "Why did she do that, Papa? Did she not feel bad?" Without blinking, without hesitation, and with the emotional delicacy of a guillotine, he said, "Because she was pathetic." Well, he really said that. With a completely straight face. Like he just declared water is wet and the sky is rude. "Why?" I asked again, a little breathless. He looked at me, eyes sharp but calm. "Because she was cowardly. Spineless. Take your pick. She didn't want to be a mother, so she left." I sat up a little. "Just like that." "Just like that," he said flatly. "She had the title, the wealth, the child. Everything. But she looked at that boy and decided she wasn't brave enough to love him. So she vanished." I stared. "People can just do that?" He snorted. Unfortunately, yes. People can be astonishingly disappointing. And utterly pathetic. Oh, I see. He definitely wanted to use stronger words. Tyrant-level words. But he toned it down. As I was there. A small child. With very delicate ears. Still, I felt bad for Osric. And weirdly relieved I'd never asked him about his mother before. Suddenly. #tyrant why Papa mode activated. That's why. Papa's voice dropped an octave. His gaze turned lethal. His back straightened like a throne had sprouted beneath him. Oh, here it comes. You must never fall in love, Lavinia. Here we go again. I gave him the look. You know the one. The universal daughter to overprotective drama king look. Papa. I'm 7. Exactly, he snapped. That's when it starts. First it's giggles. Then it's blushes. Then one day you bring home some floppy-haired bard with a lute. A lute. And he writes you terrible poetry. He looked personally betrayed by this imaginary man. And suddenly I'm forced to execute someone wearing ruffles. Yeah. That escalated real fast. I'm not bringing home anyone with a lute, I muttered. Or ruffles. Papa gave me the side-eye. The imperial side-eye. The kind that probably made entire rebellions rethink their life choices. Then he sighed. Good. A royal beat of silence passed. Then he added low and final, now go back to sleep. I nodded like a responsible, dignified, totally mature little princess and snuggled deeper into his side, basically melting into his robes. So warm. So soft. So toasty. Papa. I mumbled again. He hummed in acknowledgement. Are you secretly a royal heater? His hand paused in my hair. Bez, you're very warm. Like, annoyingly warm. Are you sure you're not smuggling a fireplace under all that velvet? Papa's eye twitched. Maybe I should knight you. Sir Heater the First. Protector of cold toes and national anxiety. Then a sigh. Tired. Lavinia. Sleep. Before I draft a decree banning bedtime conversations. You wouldn't. Try me. I smiled victorious and tucked myself tighter under his arm like a smug little marshmallow. And as his hand gently stroked my hair again, I whispered to myself. Royal heater confirmed. Then finally I let sleep win. Wrapped in silk, safety and sarcasm. Guarded by a tyrant. Sheltered by power. Loved too much perhaps. I thought I was untouchable. But fate doesn't care for tyrants or princesses. But what I didn't know was that soon I would meet him. The one who would be the reason for my death. Lavinia's POV. Royal Throne Hall of Doom. Okay fine, just the throne room. What? Sword training. I screamed so loudly that a poor guard outside dropped his spear, tripped on his own foot and nearly fell down the staircase. Standing in front of me like a smug brick wall was Ravik, the kingdom's most terrifying walking muscle tank, while Papa lounged elegantly on his oversized throne like the tyrant he absolutely was. Me. I stood there with my hands flailing in the air, dramatically gasping as if someone had just declared bedtime was now 5 p.m. forever. But why do I need to learn sword, Papa? I wailed, throwing in the most pathetic puppy eyes my 7-year-old face could summon. I am a pitiful, fragile, breakable little flower of a child. Behind Ravik, Thien chuckled. Ravik merely smirked, as this was going to be the most entertaining hour of his day. Traitors. All of them. Papa sighed, long-suffering, folding his hands like he was giving a royal TED talk. You're a princess, Lavinia. And every heir of this empire must know how to wield a sword. I blinked. Then slowly turned to Ravik and dramatically pointed at him with all the enthusiasm of a game show host. But I have Ravik. Dididun. I presented Ravik like I was showing off a prize-winning warhorse crossed with a tank crossed with a terrifying glower. Papa blinked once. Thien actually snorted. You're right, princess, Thien said smoothly, trying to hide his grin. You do have Ravik. But, let's say in the future, someone attacks you. What do? Wait for Ravik to arrive from the stables? Or... He leaned in. He was revealing a royal secret. Protect yourself? I stared. Then slumped like a sack of doomed potatoes. I'll protect myself. I mumbled, dragging the words as if I was being sentenced to peel potatoes for a week. Thien nodded like he'd just won a debate. Exactly. That's why, princess, you must know how to wield a sword. So before the knights and Ravik reach you, you can defend yourself. Okay. Darn it. When the dry sarcasm man is right, you know you've lost the argument. I glanced back at Papa and said, all right, I will do it. He just gave a firm, satisfied nod. Good. From this day forth, Ravik is not just your personal knight. He is now also your official trainer. Great. From protector of the royal sass monster to instructor of the tiny menace. I turned to Ravik with my most innocent, sparkly princess smile. Be good to me, Sir Ravik. Ravik blinked, then gasped. Princess, you don't have to call me sir. Why not? I tilted my head. Because you're a princess. He said it like Tao, as if royal logic could bend the laws of titles. I frowned thoughtfully. But, you're going to be my teacher, right? Ravik nodded warily. Then obviously I should call you sir. Like they do in night school or sword school or terrifying warrior academy or wherever you train to become a giant with muscles. Ravik opened his mouth. Closed it. Like. Then to my utter delight he blushed. I guess you're right, princess. Oh ho, look at him blushing. I giggled, delighted. Are you embarrassed? Are you blushing? Is Sir Ravik actually shy? Ravik turned away dramatically, like he was about to stare out a window and recite poetry. I am not shy, he muttered. I am honorably flustered. Thien choked on a laugh and Papa smiled. And then, boom. Ravik switched moods like a lightning strike. Now, he said, his voice dropping an octave and his eyes suddenly glinting like a battle-hardened warlord. Shall we proceed to training, princess? Oh. The mad dog knight has logged in. I swallowed, standing up straighter. A well-behaved little soldier who absolutely did not want to die in her first class. Why yeah, sure. Why not? How could I forget? Sir Ravik the blushy becomes Sir Ravik the merciless the second he smells sword practice in the air. And just like that, I was escorted to the royal training grounds like a lamb to the tactical slaughter. That's when I spotted him. Osric. In the middle of a duel, the sword glinted in the sunlight as if it was personally blessed by the war gods. He spun, parried, struck, and boom, victory. The training yard exploded in cheers. Even I clapped. Wow. Osric looked up, spotted me and smiled faintly and warmly. One of those sweet, soft, gentlemanly smiles. Then he walked over, wiping sweat from his brow, and bowed with perfect form. Greetings, princess. Osric, you were amazing. Like, whoosh whoosh slash beam. I mimicked his moves with invisible sword flourishes. He laughed and blushed. Well, thank you. I've been practicing. His gaze shifted to Ravik, who stood behind me. Why are you here early today? Osric asked. I looked at him deadpan. Because I'm starting sword training today. Osric blinked at me. Then blinked at Ravik. Then back at me with wide eyes, and now he realized I'd volunteered for a survival mission. Lavi. You do know Sir Ravik is terrifying with a sword, right? He whispered conspiratorially. He's very terrifying. I heard he once made a soldier cry just by raising his eyebrow. I nodded solemnly. I know. That's why I'm already preparing my will. Osric stifled a laugh. Well, all the best. If I survive the next hour, I'll write you a thank you scroll. Ravik cleared his throat behind me. Princess, it's time. For doom. I gave Osric one last wave, a farewell smile that basically said, tell my story when I'm gone. Bye, Osric. If I don't come back, avenge me. Don't worry, he said, grinning. I'll make a statue of you holding a sword upside down. Perfect. Very accurate. And with that, I turned and followed Ravik, dragging my feet like a tiny prisoner of war in silk shoes. My sword training had officially begun. May the gods help me. Training ground, post-training pain and suffering. Exactly 2 hours later. I was dying. Not metaphorically. Not dramatically. Literally dying. On the inside. Possibly on the outside too. My bones were staging a mutiny, my arms had turned to overcooked noodles, and my legs were definitely filing for separation. Ravik. I gasped, collapsing to the grass like a tragic heroine in the third act of a terrible opera. I can't. If I do one more push-up, squat, or whatever this demonic ritual is called. I slowly turned to glare at him, my hair sticking to my sweaty forehead. Prepare for my funeral. Ravik flinched, visibly alarmed, as if he was already imagining Papa executing him for princess overexertion. Then we should stop here, princess, he stammered, practically throwing the practice sword away like it burned his fingers. I nodded. Good. As he should. I am royalty. Not a gladiator. I didn't even respond. I just dragged my half-dead body towards Salvation. Salvation, thy name was Marshar. There he was. The fluffiest, laziest, chubbiest divine tiger in the empire, lying under a tree like a giant throw pillow. His tail flicked lazily as he licked it with complete disregard for the trauma I'd just endured. I staggered over, collapsed face first onto his belly and let out a dramatic groan. Marshar. I mumbled, muffled by fluff. Your master is dead. Sword training has claimed me. There was no warning. No mercy. Just burpees. Marshar gave a low, sympathetic roar that sounded halfway between, I feel you, and, can I go back to napping now? I poked his cheek. Be a good boy and drag me to my chambers, okay? Or at least nudge me until I roll in the general direction. He blinked. Then, to my absolute delight, the goodest, roundest boy in the kingdom stood up, gently bent his massive head and let me climb on. With a great flump, I flopped over his back, limbs dangling off like a sack of royal potatoes, and off we went. Down the hallway. Past stunned servants. One of them whispered, Is the princess riding the divine beast, like a fainting duchess? Yes, I was. I raised one hand weakly and said, Make way, for the fallen warrior. Later, towards the throne room. That was a great bath, I sighed, floating down the palace corridor. Now, I had no muscle pain, no emotional trauma, and definitely wasn't almost buried alive by sword training earlier. Marshar walked beside me like my fluffy little knight, and behind us followed Morella and Ravik. I think our princess is going to be the best sword fighter in the empire, Morella said sweetly, practically glowing with pride. No. Bad idea. Do not say that out loud. I will make sure she does, Ravik declared, standing straighter than a javelin, eyes gleaming like someone just told him sword fighting was now a religion and he was the high priest. Oh ghost. He triggered him. He triggered the beast. Sigh. I just started training today. And now they were plotting my title as Lavinia the Blade Princess, and I had a strong feeling they were already designing statues of me holding dual swords while lightning struck in the background. Ridiculous. Because the best sword fighter in the empire? It won't be me or Osric. It'll be him. The boy readers loved. The prodigy. The hero. The one who'll poison me to death in future. And just as I was wallowing in that beautiful premonition, whammum. Ack. I collided full speed into a human wall. Ouch. Oh my. Are you all right, princess? Morella gasped, already inspecting my elbows as if I was made of glass and drama. I groaned, holding my forehead. That hurts. I swear I saw stars. Or birds. Or bird-shaped stars. Are you okay? Came a voice. A boyish voice. Warmcome. Dangerously charming. My eyes flew up. And there he was. A boy. My age, maybe a little taller. Black hair. Golden eyes that looked like they'd swallowed sunlight and were now judging my clumsiness politely. Ghost. He's cute, Ghost. He's so handsome, Ghost. Who left a rare collectible treasure here in the hallway unsupervised. I'm sorry. Did it hurt you? He asked, blinking at me like a concerned puppy prince. And just like that, I completely forgot the part where I hit him like a rogue coconut. Nope. I chirped, practically saluting. Didn't hurt at all. I am pain-proof. I bounce like a pancake. He smiled, clearly amused but trying not to laugh at my full-body recovery. That's good. He chuckled. You're very spirited, Princess Lavinia. So he know who I am. Then he gave a polite little bow, hand on his chest like a perfect gentleman. It's an honor to meet the princess of the Elorian Empire. I'm Selim Viral. I'm the adopted son of Marquis Everett. What did you just say? My voice came out in a whisper, half breath, half disbelief. He tilted his head, blinking innocently. I'm Selim Viral, princess. And I'm honored to meet you. No. That name. Selim Viral. My stomach dropped faster than my grades in math class. The charming boy in front of me wasn't just anyone. He was him. The second male lead of this novel. The boy every reader pitied. The hero in shadows. The prodigy who smiled with sunshine in his eyes. And the one who would one day betray me, poison me, leave my lifeless body lying in the palace garden. So, he finally appeared. Chapter end. A scene from the novel Lavinia transmigrated into unknown POV, the original Lavinia. The garden was quiet. Too quiet. Dusk had spilled across the palace in violet shadows, painting the marble statues in hues of mourning. The moon hung low, swollen with secrets, watching like a silent witness. A cold breeze danced through the lavender bushes, their silver-tipped leaves rustling like whispered warnings. And Lavinia? She was dying. She lay sprawled on the dewy grass, her once rosy lips now trembling with each shallow breath, crimson blooming at the corner of her mouth like a cruel flower. Her fingers clawed weakly at the earth beneath her, trying, failing, to hold on. "Why?" she rasped, her voice little more than a broken thread. Across from her, Selim stood frozen. His face, always unreadable, always composed, now looked carved from marble, but not the calm kind. The cracked kind. The kind that's about to shatter. His hand, the one that had held the vial, trembled as he let it fall. The glass hit the stone path and exploded into 1,000 glittering shards. Lavinia flinched at the sound. Her eyes found his. "You." He choked, coughing violently. Blood smeared her chin. "You did this to me?" She tried to lift a hand to him, her fingers stained red, shaking violently. "I trusted you. You were the only one left. After everyone else. You were the only one I had left. Why?" Selim took a step back. His lips parted. Then closed. Then parted again. He didn't move toward her. Didn't kneel. Didn't cry. Only whispered, voice tight with guilt and steel, "I'm sorry, princess. But you don't deserve to live. Your death is the only way she, the Grand Duchess, can have peace." For a moment, silence. Then, Lavinia laughed. It was soft. Bitter. And broken. "So, it's her again. Always her." Her laugh cracked into a cough. Her body twisted with pain. Selim looked like he might break. But he said nothing. Did nothing. Her vision blurred. The stars above wavered like melting glass. Her heartbeat slowed. Thump. 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 And then, a shout. "Lavinia!" Her head turned barely. From the shadows, a man burst into the garden, long golden hair catching the moonlight, crimson eyes burning like wrath incarnate. "Arrest him!" he roared, pointing at Selim. Guards surged from behind. Selim didn't run. He didn't fight. He just dropped to his knees as if the weight of what he'd done had finally crushed him. Lavinia blinked slowly. Her gaze drifted, and locked onto the figure charging toward her next. A tall man in black robes. A crown glinting atop his head. A face twisted in panic. "Father," she whispered. It was the Emperor. The cold, distant man who had never once looked her way in all her life. He was running to her now. His eyes were wild. His voice cracking. It was the first time Lavinia had seen her father run since she was born. He smiled faintly. A tear slid down her cheek. And then, equals 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 equals. Lavinia's POV, present day, the royal chamber, night. Ugh. I jolted upright, gasping like I'd just drowned and come back from the dead. Sweat drenched my nightgown. My heart thundered like a war drum, and my hands were clutching the silk bedsheets like they were the only thing keeping me from falling into the abyss. That garden. That blood. That betrayal. Why the hell did I remember that part of the novel out of nowhere? And not just remember, live it. It didn't feel like a dream. Felt like I had been there. As if it was my body lying on the cold grass, my mouth spilling blood, and my heart breaking as the only person I trusted let me die. My breath caught. I couldn't move. Then, what's the matter? The voice was soft, sleep-roughened, concerned. I turned startled and saw him. He sat up beside me, eyes blinking blearily, hair tousled from sleep. The moonlight cast a gentle glow on his features, illuminating the crease of worry between his brows. Without thinking, I launched myself into his arms. Papa. My voice cracked, as fragile as glass on the edge of shattering. He didn't hesitate. His arms closed around me instantly, warm and firm, grounding me. He held me tight like he could feel the storm I was barely holding in. His hand stroked gently through my hair again and again. "Shh. It's okay, sweetheart," he murmured. "It's okay. I've got you." I buried my face against his chest, squeezing my eyes shut. His heartbeat was steady, calm, real. And yet my mind wouldn't stop spinning, chasing that nightmare that felt less like a dream and more like a memory. He whispered again, "Did you have a nightmare?" I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. "Yes, Papa." I finally managed, my voice small. But it didn't feel like a normal dream. It felt too real. He leaned back slightly to look at me, brushing hair from my damp forehead. "What was it about?" he asked softly. I hesitated. How could I tell him? That I watched myself die? That I remembered being someone else entirely? That the pain of betrayal still lingered in my chest like a fresh wound? I don't know, I lied. It's all jumbled. But I felt like I was really there. Like I was someone else. And I was dying. Papa's expression faltered. Just for a second. Then he kissed the top of my head. "Nightmares feel like that sometimes," he said gently, though his voice was tighter than before. "The mind can play cruel tricks on us when we sleep." I didn't respond. I just clung to him tighter, pressing myself into his warmth like I could escape the chill of that garden and the feel of death on my skin. I didn't know why, but something deep inside me whispered, that wasn't just a nightmare. Then Papa smoothed the blanket over me gently, his expression carved with concern. "Shall I tell you a tale, my little one?" he asked in that deep, imperial voice. "A tale?" I whispered, unsure if I had heard correctly. "A bedtime tale," he clarified, with the dignified air of a man bestowing royal favors. "An old tale. One I rarely speak of." I blinked. "No bedtime tales, Papa?" "I am the Emperor," he replied gravely. "I know everything." "Of course." He cleared his throat and began, as if issuing an official proclamation. "Once upon a time," Papa began, his voice as deep and serious as a royal decree, "in a kingdom, one not as great as mine, there lived a most radiant young maiden. Her hair shimmered like spun gold, her eyes sparkled like twilight stars, and her heart was purer than the first snow of winter." I blinked. That sounded suspiciously familiar. "But alas," Papa continued, his tone now grim, "her fate was cruel. She was made to dwell among cinders, clothed in soot, surrounded by stepsisters uglier than broken treaties and louder than court jesters on sugar." Wait. I narrowed my eyes. Why does this sound like Cinderella? But in Papa's version. Papa carried on, completely unaware of my growing suspicion. Or ignoring it. "This poor child, whom we shall call Lady Ashblossom, to preserve her dignity, was mistreated, overworked, and most gravely underfed. And she endured it because she was kind." His voice curled around the word kind like it was a curse. "One day, a royal ball was announced by a prince." He practically spat the word. "A soft-handed fool who believed true love could be found by staring at someone for 3 minutes and waltzing poorly." "Papa." "Hush," he commanded gently, patting my head like I was a kitten interrupting a war council. "This prince, who clearly had no counsel, declared that whichever maiden caught his eye would become his bride. He sent out invitations without background checks. No bloodlines, no political alliance, just who looks prettiest in candlelight." He exhaled. "Imperial. Judging the prince across realms. Lady Ashblossom, our unfortunate maiden, was visited by a sorceress. Elderly. Dressed like a curse. But she gave the girl a gown, some impractical shoes made of glass, and a carriage grown from a vegetable." His brow twitched. "A vegetable? They expected her to enter a royal court and produce. I didn't dare laugh. He looked genuinely offended on her behalf. She went to the palace. The prince saw her. And, as expected of a man led more by his hormones than his advisors, he declared her the one. Without learning her name. Papa turned to me, voice low and dangerous. Never trust a man who loves you without knowing what you've survived. I swallowed. Yes, Papa. At midnight she fled. Smart girl. But in her haste she left behind a shoe. And what did the prince do? His expression was thunderous. He sent men to shove that shoe onto every woman's foot in the land. No security. No questions. Just, try this on. As if the kingdom were a shoe store and he'd misplaced his favorite pair. Papa, eventually, Papa continued, Lady Ashblossom was found. But when the prince proposed, she looked him dead in the eyes and said. He leaned forward, voice deep as thunder, you fell in love with a shoe. I shall not marry a man who sees me as an accessory. Then she turned around and walked away barefoot like a sovereign. That's not how the story goes, I whispered. It is now, Papa replied coldly. I am the emperor. I blinked. And what happened to her stepfamily? Tried and convicted. Sentenced to 10 years of hard labor and mandatory etiquette lessons. And the prince? He was last seen weeping into a lace curtain and composing poetry about feet. I banned it from entering our libraries. I blinked again. Was there no romance at all? Papa met my gaze, unblinking. The only love a woman should trust is from her father. All else must be interrogated. Papa, are you rewriting fairy tales? The end, Papa concluded grandly. He smiled proudly as though he'd just delivered a national address. Wow, I whispered. You really twisted the entire fairy tale, Papa. Papa nodded proudly. I improved it. I stared at him, speechless. Sleep now, he whispered, voice like velvet wrapped around steel. Dream not of foolish princes but of your father's kingdom, where none shall harm you and no man shall come within 10 feet without a written petition and 3 background checks. I closed my eyes, a smile tugging at my lips. Papa may not have been the best storyteller, but in that moment, wrapped in his arms, guarded by his impossible rules and tyrannical affection, I had never felt safer. Lavinia's POV, Royal Training Grounds, morning of my immediate regret. There are a few moments in life where you realize, with great clarity and zero dignity, that you've made a terrible, horrible, deeply regretful mistake. For me, that moment came exactly 4 seconds into my next sword lesson. Princess, Ravik said with the utmost seriousness, this is your sword. He presented it like it was Excalibur. I, meanwhile, stared at it like it was a freshly sharpened murder stick with betrayal written all over it. Are you sure this isn't too sharp? I asked suspiciously, squinting at the gleaming blade. What if it slips? What if it cuts off someone's ear? What if that someone is me? It's a practice sword, Ravik said patiently, although a vein on his temple twitched. It's dull. You're more likely to bonk than bleed. Oh. I nodded wisely, then held the sword upside down like a bouquet. Ravik stared. Princess, that's the wrong way. It is. I looked down. Oh. I flipped it around, then promptly dropped it. It hit the ground with a solid thunk and nearly took my toe with it. Ghost, I muttered, hopping backward. Ravik let out a long sigh that sounded like he was already drafting a resignation letter. Let us begin with stance, then. Feet apart. Bend your knees. Raise your arms. No, bend the elbows, not the wrist. You are not summoning thunder. Are you sure? I grinned, flailing the sword above my head dramatically. Because I feel very thunder goddess right now. You look like you're about to swat a fly the size of a dragon. I pouted. Osric, training a few feet away, snorted loudly and pretended to cough. I narrowed my eyes at him. Don't mock me. I'm very dangerous. Extremely, Ravik said deadpan. You've almost taken out yourself twice. 3rd time's the charm. 3rd time you'll sprain your royal spleen. He adjusted my stance again, this time kneeling in front of me with the patience of a monk and the visible exhaustion of a man who regretted all his life choices. You must treat the sword as an extension of your body, he said solemnly. You must respect it. Feel it. Become one with it. I'd rather become one with a croissant, I muttered. What was that? Nothing, Sir Ravik. I live for the blade. I lifted the wooden practice sword again with dramatic flair, like a tiny warrior who'd just sworn vengeance for a fallen pastry. Ravik, ever patient and probably re-evaluating his life choices, exhaled for the 9th time and moved behind me. All right, he said, gently nudging my elbows into something that resembled alignment. Let's try again. First position, high guard. Now move into. My sword smacked his knee again. Ghosts preserve us, Ravik muttered under his breath. Your sword is possessed. It's spirited, I corrected proudly, holding it like it was Excalibur reborn. Like its wielder, Osric called out from the side, barely hiding a grin. I squinted at him. Didn't you have your own training today? He shrugged, lounging on a bench like he was born there. I felt yours might be educational. Right. Educational. He meant hilarious. I turned back, swinging my sword with every ounce of enthusiasm and precisely zero accuracy. And then, the atmosphere changed. You know that moment in horror novels, where the forest goes silent, birds flee the trees, and a distant bell tolls for someone's doom? Yeah. That moment. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The breeze stiffened, then stopped altogether. Even the sun looked like it noped out of the sky. Ravik stiffened mid-step. Osric sat up straight like a cat who just saw a ghost. A servant dropped his broom and ran. Me. I felt it. That deeply cursed aura. That very specific brand of imperial doom. And then, with the precision of 1,000 nightmares and the drama of 1,000 more, he arrived. The Emperor of Valorian. The scourge of the Southern Campaign. And, incidentally, my bedtime storyteller. He strode across the training field in flowing obsidian robes trimmed in gold, looking like the final boss in a villain origin story. I blinked. Papa. Why are you here? I asked, more curious than surprised. The man did have a flair for dramatic entrances. I was informed, he said, voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous, that my dearest daughter has taken up the sword. But it's a wooden sword. His eyes glinted. The kind of glint that made ministers sweat and ambassadors question their citizenship. And I knew this broody, overly dramatic man had absolutely abandoned all state matters, probably dumped them on poor Theon's desk, just to come here and supervise my sword practice like it was a national crisis. A sword, he said, is still a sword when wielded by a princess. That makes it dangerous. Oh no. Oh no. Why do I feel a chill around me? Ravik bowed deeply. Your Majesty. I was guiding the princess through the basics. Papa turned to him. Then turned to me. Then back to Ravik. I shall take over. And the world paused. Cue the floating red letters in my brain. Abort mission. No. Papa, it's okay. Really. Ravik's doing great. I'm barely bleeding. Papa ignored me. He was already unfastening his cape with the same deadly elegance as someone preparing for a duel over land taxes. Let me see what my daughter has learned and is capable of. But Papa, I haven't learned anything yet. I practically bounced in panic. He didn't respond. Of course he didn't. Ravik stepped back like he'd just been handed a cursed artifact. Osric gave me a slow, incredibly unhelpful thumbs up from the bench. Me. I was now on the training field. With a sword in hand. Facing the actual emperor. Not my papa. No pressure. He didn't ease me in with a demo or instructions. No. He raised his own sword, long silver-edged, forged in the fires of war, probably whispering in Latin, and said simply, attack. I stared at him. Papa, what happened to warm-up drills? Maybe, stretching? Maybe we breathe together first. You've already warmed up, he said flatly. By striking your Sir Ravik's knee 12 times. Fair. Still rude. I swallowed hard. My palms were sweating like I owed them money. But I lifted my wooden sword with all the poise I could muster and lunged. It was dramatic. It was bold. It was catastrophic. My foot caught the hem of my shirt. I windmilled forward like a paper fan in a storm. Papa sidestepped with the elegance of a ballroom ghost avoiding a peasant's cough. Balance, he said dryly. Try again. I tried. And again. And again. Each attempt ended with me stumbling, gasping, and swinging like an angry duck with vertigo. By now, people were peeking out from behind bushes, trees, and stone pillars like nosy woodland creatures. A small crowd of knights had gathered, watching with the quiet awe of men witnessing either a miracle in progress or a public disaster with excellent form. "Your footwork is expressive," he commented, which was not encouraging. "Thank you," I wheezed. It was not a compliment. Rude. But then attempt number 6. I felt it. A rush. A spark. The blood of warriors. I roared. I spun. I unleashed every ounce of princess fury in a glorious arc of destiny, and, whack, my sword flew out of my hands with glorious force and smacked Papa in the leg. The Emperor. A Valorian. Like, silence. Crushing cosmic silence. Even the wind went, dim. Osric gasped. Ravik turned as white as parchment. A stable boy dropped to his knees and prayed for deliverance. Me. I stood frozen. Wide-eyed. Small. So very small. "Oopsie, Papa," I said, flashing the most innocent grin I could muster. "Pie bad." Papa looked down. At the leg that had just been assaulted by a weaponized stick. Then looked up. At me. "Was that an assassination attempt?" He asked slowly, like he genuinely hadn't decided whether to be amused or offended. "Not unless it worked." I blurted. "Wait, no. I meant I would never." He stepped forward. I backpedaled like a startled goat. "Papa. I love you. I'm your darling daughter. The sunshine of your throne room and, guess life too." He crouched slowly, picked up the fallen sword and examined it like it had just declared war. "I shall have it executed," he muttered. "The sword." He turned to me, a slow, dangerous smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice smooth as silk but laced with the kind of menace that made grown men flinch, "we begin footwork. And I shall personally ensure you do it right." The breeze died. Somewhere a bird gave up mid-flight and fell into a bush. A squirrel peeked out from a tree, saw the Emperor's expression and noped back into its hole. The knights standing nearby took a collective breath. Osric silently crossed himself. And I stood there, tiny wooden sword in hand, soul already halfway packed and ready to flee the Empire. Right then and there I knew. I had made a grave. A royal. A sword to the leg. Emperor was watching, absolutely no refund, no take-backs mistake. My funeral? Book. My regrets? Infinite. My survival rate? Unclear. Lavinia's POV. My life as Lavinia Devereux was going remarkably well. Suspiciously well. I mean, for a girl who was originally meant to be ignored, poisoned, banished, and erased from royal history like a particularly inconvenient typo, I was thriving. From dustbin princess to spoiled imperial treasure, from Reina Suzuki, tragic salarywoman, to Lavinia Devereux, heir apparent and national obsession, I had scaled the royal ladder, climbed over fate's script, and kicked emotional trauma in the shins on the way up. Sure, once upon a time I'd accepted my fate. I looked the original plot square in its smug, cruel face and said, "Fine. Kill me gently with poison tea. Just don't toss me off a balcony or make me die in an ugly dress." But alas. The plot? It was spiraling. Violently. Chaotically. Hilariously. I, the character who should have been neglected, was now practically palace royalty wrapped in a silk bow. No, scratch that, I am royalty. People gossiped about me like I was the Empire's most beloved scandal. I was on the cover of every noble gossip scroll. Even I wanted to be me. And let's be honest, I was thriving. And the plot? Oh, the plot was being roasted on a spit. Take Osric, for example. The male lead was originally destined to lose his father, the Grand Duke Regis, at the age of 8 and grow up broody and battle-scarred. Reality. His father is still alive and giving unsolicited parenting advice to Papa. Meanwhile, Osric is glowing, handsome, and on track to become the Empire's most eligible war general, if a war even happens. And then there's Papa. The original script described him as a terrifying, tyrannical, emotionally distant emperor. Reality, still terrifying, still tyrannical. But now he has a soft spot the size of the Empire for his adorable, clever, devastatingly beautiful daughter, me. He installed a mini throne beside his. He has a dedicated Lavinia snack budget. He once threatened to fire the palace chef because the custard wasn't soft enough for my taste. And as for my engagement to Osric? If about that. It was supposed to be politically arranged by now. Current status, non-existent. Zero talks. Zilch. Nada. I have more serious conversations with Marcia than I do about marriage. The palace avoids the M word like it's a cursed artifact. Papa glares at anyone who so much as breathes betrothal. So yes, things have changed. I have power. I have love. I have snacks delivered hourly. And yet, why, the hell? Are Selim Viral and Marquis Everett here? Every time I see them, my inner voice screams, pluck their teeth out one by one and feed them to the palace ducks. We don't have ducks yet. But we could. I might pass a decree. Marquis Everett equals plot's favorite villain. Selim Viral equals future traitor. Me equals their designated chew toy. No. Now they were standing before me in the throne room like nothing was wrong. Like they won't be trying to script my tragic ending. Selim, unfortunately, was still disgustingly divine looking at this early age. All cheekbones, sharp jawline, and the kind of aura that made goddesses drop their scrolls. Even the moonlight looked at him and went, "Ugh, fine, I'll glow a little harder." But I wasn't swooning. I was boiling. He bowed low, his voice like silk soaked in venom. "Greetings to Her Highness." Oh, he bows. How polite. I didn't respond. I just squinted at him, sitting beside Papa on my honorary mini throne, sipping on peach juice with enough quiet menace to melt iron. Marquis Everett stood beside him, trying to look neutral. Which, in his case, meant he looked like he was 1 minute away from hurling a chandelier at me. My fingers twitched. Should I order Marcia to jump on Selim and use him as a mattress? Or better, should I execute him? I wondered briefly. I mean, it's not like I'd do it myself. That would be unladylike. But one tear. Just one sparkly, well-timed sob, paired with a quiver of my lower lip, and Papa would personally catapult him into the sun before dessert. But, unfortunately and tragically, I couldn't misuse my power. Not that I hadn't considered it. But alas, personal growth was a thing now. Gross. Before I could indulge in further royal revenge fantasies, Papa spoke. His voice was cold. So cold, the temperature in the throne room dropped a full 3 degrees. "Why are you here, Marquis?" Papa asked, tone soft as silk and twice as dangerous. "Do you mistake the imperial palace for a museum you may wander into on a whim?" Direct hit. I tried not to beam. Papa was in savage mode today. My favorite. Marquis Everett, ever the political snake in embroidered brocade, pulled out that smile. The one that made his face cramp and everyone else's stomachs churn. "My sincerest apologies, Your Majesty," he said, his voice dripping with syrupy politeness that made my teeth ache. "I did not mean to arrive unannounced. I merely wished to offer my deepest gratitude, on behalf of my son Selim." I blinked. Gratitude, for what? Was it for the trauma he inflicted on the original Lavinia? The betrayal arc? The poisoned tears? "As you've graciously permitted," the Marquis continued, all smug sparkle and well-rehearsed charm, "Selim will begin his sword training under the tutelage of the Imperial Swordmaster Ravik from this week." I choked on my peach juice. Did I hear that right? Training. Here. In my home. Where I reign with snacks and sarcasm. "He shall receive his instruction here," Marquis Everett added proudly, as if he'd just donated to an orphanage and not, delivered the future traitor into our marble-floored. I turned. Slowly. Mechanically. Like a wind-up doll possessed by fury. Selim was bowing. Elegant. Respectful. Like he hadn't once watched me die, fictionally, and walked away like he forgot to water a plant. "I look forward to serving under the imperial discipline, Your Majesty," Selim said. His voice was velvet. Rich, calm, arrogant. Like he knew full well the number of fan clubs he probably had. Then his eyes flicked up. To me. Just for a second. And I swear on all things royal, he smirked. This man. This perfectly sculpted, betrayal-scented, sharp-jawed disaster in human form, was going to train. Here. Oh no. No. Absolutely not. I looked at Papa, silently begging. "Papa, please. He's a walking red flag. An illustrated warning poster. Do you not feel the plot twist energy radiating off him?" Papa didn't look thrilled either. His fingers drummed once on the carved lion head of his throne, a sound that usually preceded war declarations and economic collapse. "Very well," Papa said curtly. "But be warned, Marquis. My palace is not a playground. If your son missteps once, even slightly..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Even the shadows in the room flinched. Selim only bowed lower, composed as ever. "Understood, Your Majesty." Look at him. All respectful posture and stormy eyes, that I bet he journals in the moonlight and writes passive-aggressive haikus about swords. Then, Marquis Everett had the audacity to turn to me. Like he just remembered I existed. Which was hilarious, considering I was sitting literally next to the Emperor on a raised dais with fruit in my lap like a benevolent goddess of judgment. "And to Her Highness," he said, bowing again. "My son is honored to train under the same roof. I'm certain you'll find him agreeable." I narrowed my eyes. That tone. That fake fond, overly polished diplomatic tone. He was hiding something. There was politics behind that smile and I didn't like it. It smelled like schemes. Suspicious. Very suspicious. I smiled back. Tight. Sweet. With all the warmth of an ice dagger. "Oh, I'm sure I'll find him something." Selim's eyes met mine again. And this time I didn't just glare. No. I weaponized it. I threw a full-blown, maximum-capacity, death-glare-turned laser beam straight at his perfectly symmetrical face. That was the sound of my eyeball fury cannon firing. Everyone else in the throne room saw an elegant princess sitting quietly on a velvet seat beside her emperor father. But Selim saw war that he saw rage incarnate in tiara form. "You future traitor bastard," I screamed silently in fluent princess rage language internally. "You make one wrong move, and I will personally launch you out of this palace like a confetti cannon on Judgment Day." He blinked. And then he smiled. A small one. Barely there. But I saw it. Smug little drama prince. Which only made me lean forward just slightly on the throne, tilt my head and channel the full force of my royal aura into one singular unspoken promise. Touch. A single thread of destiny, and I swear on my fruit platter I will show you who the hell I am. Silence settled in the throne room. Even the guards looked tense, like they felt something cosmic shift. And Papa, he just glanced at me and gave me that look. The very specific one that said, "What's wrong with her again?" Since the plot was shifting like a moody monsoon with commitment issues, I made a decision. A firm, noble, princess-level decision. I would watch Selim Viral like a hawk. A hawk in a silk dress. With a tiara and a divine beast with a violent streak and a dramatic flair for rolling into flower beds. Because this future traitor, this emotionally constipated, plot-warping, sword-flipping, cheekbone-flexing disaster of a character, he was not getting away with anything. But there was something else. Something that had been poking at the back of my brain like a child poking a sleeping dragon with a stick. Marquis Everett was never meant to adopt Selim. Not in Chapter 3. Not in Chapter 57 nor in 98. Not in this timeline. Not in this royal multiverse where I currently ruled the palace snack budget and public opinion. In the original novel, the one I read, cried over, rage annotated and ultimately transmigrated into like some overachieving isekai heroine, Marquis Everett adopted the female lead. Not Selim. Not this guy with the annoyingly beautiful yellow eyes and betrayal aura strong enough to fog up a prophecy mirror. Thil, bless her tragic little heart, was supposed to be adopted later. Much later. Only after I got banished from the palace and lost my title, and she was adopted because she could marry Osric easily. Selim's story? Totally different. He was meant to suffer. Raised in the countryside. Dusty. Poor. Morally conflicted. Eventually recruited into the palace knights. Quiet. Loyal. Submissive. Angsty in a poetic way. Eventually became my personal knight with unresolved longing and 5 volumes of emotional repression. But never, was he supposed to be adopted by the Marquis. This timeline was illegal. I should sue the universe, I muttered darkly under my breath as I watched Selim from behind a suspiciously large potted fern near the training grounds. It had been exactly 14 days since Selim Viral first stepped foot inside the imperial palace, and I was already developing 14 new stress wrinkles. Don't tell the royal beauticians. They'd panic and throw rosewater at me. Currently, I was stalking him. Monitoring. I was monitoring him. It's totally different, okay? I had positioned myself like a professional spy, behind the fern, crouched low, notebook in hand, and Marsher beside me, doing his best impression of a crime-solving sidekick. He was squinting at Selim through the leaves. I was holding his tail because he was way too excited and apparently thought we were playing some kind of royal detective game. Which we were, I guess. Just with slightly higher stakes. Like treason. And betrayal. And possible sword-related drama. We were very professional. Then, what exactly are you doing, Lavi? I gasped. Marcia yelped. And there stood Osric holding his sword, eyebrows raised, his face very clearly stuck between concern and oh no, she's doing something again. I immediately pulled him down behind the fern with me like a totally rational person. Shoo! I hissed. We're on a mission. Mission? He asked, blinking as he tried to right his now askew breastplate. I'm collecting data, I whispered conspiratorially. Data? He repeated slowly. I nodded, eyes narrowed as I scribbled something in my tiny leather-bound notebook labeled in very aggressive cursive. Coelum viral. Suspicious activities and possible weaknesses. Draft 3. Suspicious behavior. Weak points. Possible allergies. I grinned, tapping my chin. To torture him with later if needed. Osric blinked. Twice. Are you making an assassination spreadsheet? Don't be ridiculous, I said, mildly offended. Beat. It's a full dossier. I flipped the page to show him a color-coded pie chart titled, Likelihood of Betrayal versus Degree of Handsomeness. Papa always said be prepared. He meant it for statecraft and treaties. I took it to mean, track your enemies like a petty, over-caffeinated squirrel with a grudge. Osric groaned and dropped his head into his hands. You're going to start a diplomatic incident. I'll end it in style, I said cheerfully. Coelum, meanwhile, was sparring like he'd never betrayed me in another life. Which was insulting, frankly. Look at him, I hissed. Look at me, I can flip a sword and control my emotions like a normal person. Disgusting. You know he's just doing drills, right? Drills of deceit. Marcia growled in support. I narrowed my eyes and resumed surveillance. Coelum was swinging his sword under Ravik's supervision with far too much grace for someone I had mentally classified as public enemy number 1. I scribbled something in my invisible notebook. Probably, smirks too confidently equals suspicious. But then a sting. Right at the back of my neck. I turned. And there he was. Osric. Watching me. Not glaring exactly. But not smiling either. His brows were drawn just slightly, arms crossed tighter than before. That vague teenage tension in his shoulders? Oh yeah. That wasn't just the sun in his eyes. What happened? I asked, blinking. He looked away. Which was weird. Osric never looked away. Not from me. Not when I was plotting emotional revenge or practicing royal walkovers in the garden. Nothing, Osric said. Clipped. Then a beat later, softly and with the emotional subtlety of a thundercloud. I don't like you watching him like that. What does that even mean? My internal princess radar started beeping wildly. Was that jealousy? Possessiveness? Disapproval? Emotional indigestion? Why would he have all that, though? I blinked at him. Fully. Like a confused duck. What? You shouldn't waste your time watching someone like him, Osric muttered, arms still crossed like a teen statue of broody judgment. His jaw was tight. His eyes weren't on me. They were locked on Coelum across the field like he was trying to duel him using sheer hatred. I stammered. He's suspicious, that's why. I'm doing royal surveillance. For the good of the Empire. Oh, said a smooth, velvety voice behind me. Princess Lavinia? I stiffened. Damn it. I turned slowly like a character in a horror movie about to turn around and meet the villain. And there he was. Coelum viral. Future traitor. Current smirking menace. Standing far too close, wearing imperial black training gear like a second skin, his hair tousled to strategic perfection, as if the wind itself worked part-time as his stylist. And that smirk? Yeah. That smirk had ulterior motives written in glitter ink and sealed with betrayal wax. Greetings to Her Highness, he said, bowing with all the elegance of a man who definitely knew which fork to use and which kingdom to ruin. I blinked. Why, are you here? Weren't you training? I finished drills early, he said smoothly. And I noticed you here. Thought I'd come greet you. He turned slightly, his eyes shifting to Osric with perfect calculated grace. And greetings to the young Lord of Valerius, Selim added, his tone polite, but with the kind of edge that made it sound like a challenge wrapped in silk. Osric's eyes narrowed a fraction of a millimeter. Virile, he replied flatly. But it was happening. That ancient energy. The ancestral tension point, 2 teenage boys. 1 princess. 0 chill. Selim tilted his head, faux gracious. It's an honor to share training grounds with you. Your reputation precedes you. I'm sure it does, Osric said, tone dry as the desert. Then, with the calm of someone placing a sword down blade first, he added, I look forward to dueling you soon. Well, we're already threatening each other? The plot hasn't even reached page 1. Selim smiled. It would be an honor, my lord. And then he turned to me. And turned up the charm to criminal levels. And I hope we will get along in the future, princess. It would be an honor to be your friend. Friend? I wouldn't even let him hold my snack plate, let alone my trust. I opened my mouth, ready with something dry, witty, and deeply unfriendly when, do you think earning the princess's friendship is that easy? Osric cut in, voice low and sharp. Selim blinked. I only offered friendship, Lord Valerius. I didn't realize that required your permission. It doesn't, Osric said, stepping a little closer, but it does require worth. Oh my gods. They were posturing. Like noble peacocks. With swords. Selim arched a perfect brow. And who decides that worth? You. I know her, Osric said tightly. Since she was born. I know what she likes. What she hates. What kind of people she deserves. And I simply offered to be one of those people, Selim replied, smiling as if he hadn't just launched a verbal missile. Well, Osric said, smiling back with teeth, good luck. Her Highness doesn't make friends easily. Something shifted in the air. Not visibly. Not audibly. But noticeably. The garden felt colder. Like someone had opened a diplomatic freeze agreement and forgotten to close it. Birds stopped chirping. A squirrel dropped its acorn and quietly evacuated the scene. Tension was everywhere. I, being the emotional genius that I am, did the only rational thing possible. I stepped back half a pace, offered my best royal laugh, the one I usually reserve for awkward dinner parties and sudden noble proposals, and said, you boys have fun trying to outbrood each other. I'm going to see Papa. He must be missing me. You know, can't go 5 minutes without his daughter-shaped ray of sunshine. Neither of them responded. Osric's jaw was tight. Selim's smirk twitched. Abort mission. Abort mission now. Okay, bye. I blurted and dashed. Full gown swooshing, hair bouncing, escape run mode. Marcia roared once and followed loyally, galloping after me like a furry little knight abandoning the battlefield. Together we fled the silent war zone like true cowards of peace. Behind me, tension. Sparks. Possibly murder in the form of polite conversation. Ahead of me, safety. And hopefully 0 boys with god-tier cheekbones and death glare drama. Home info 0 comments ad library. I stormed down the marbled corridor with the righteous fury of a girl fleeing a hormonal battlefield she never agreed to star in. Selim and Osric. Both are annoyingly handsome. Both suspiciously intense. Both giving me a brain cramp and heartburn before lunch. One smirk. One more smirk from either of them, I hissed under my breath, clutching my skirts like they were emotional support fabric. And I swear I'm launching myself out the nearest palace window. Marcia, I muttered, glancing down at my furry guardian of destruction. He blinked up at me, his eyes glowing with innocent bloodlust. I gave his fuzzy head a reassuring pat and whispered darkly, Papa was right. I should stay away from pretty boys with tragic backstories and flawless cheekbones. They're a menace to my blood pressure. Marcia gave a low, supportive growl. The kind that meant, I will maul them politely if you wish it. The Princess Lavinia. I turned only slightly and it was Ravik. Teacher Evelyn has arrived. Shall we go? Yes, I said dramatically. Let's. Take me to the land of knowledge where boys don't exist. He blinked. Right. We arrived at my personal study room, all warm sunlight, polished bookcases, and enough cushions to host a rebellion of sleepy kittens. And standing by the grand whiteboard of doom was, Good morning, teacher. I chirped, dashing in with the unearned enthusiasm of a student who absolutely did not skim last night's homework. Teacher Evelyn, tall, elegant, always smelling faintly of old parchment and cinnamon, smiled at me like she hadn't just been summoned to teach a gremlin in a tiara. "Greetings to Her Highness," she said, bowing gracefully. I flopped into my chair with all the grace of a queen and the spine of a jellyfish. Ravik stationed himself behind me, perfect night mode activated. Marshall plopped down beside me like a sentient loaf of murder bread, tail thumping against the carpet. Teacher Evelyn chuckled softly. "Shall we begin, princess?" "Yes." She opened her book. "Today's topic is a fascinating one." I leaned in. "The rise of the first emperor of Elorion, the founder of this very empire." My whole body perked up like a puppy hearing the word treat. Finally. The one person I actually wanted to learn about. My royal ancestor. The man who united the fracturing kingdoms. The original Devereux legend, aka the drama king of history himself. Teacher Evelyn opened a thick velvet-bound tome and set it gently on the table like it was holy scripture. And honestly, in this palace it probably was. That book was older than half the noble houses in the empire. Possibly haunted. Probably dramatic. She smiled softly, like she was about to begin a bedtime story for royalty. Which technically, she was. As you already know, the first emperor's name was Hadrian Verilith Devereux, the man remembered across the continent as the Iron Crown. I blinked. The Iron Crown? Because of course he had a title. A name wasn't enough for this man. He who wore a crimson cloak made from the banners of conquered kingdoms. Who forged peace by first bringing every warlord to heel. Who built the throne I'd how occasionally eat peaches on. What a legacy. What a drama icon. Teacher Evelyn continued, her voice taking on that airy, historical tone. He was born during the year of falling stars. Of course he was. That's the most main character birth year imaginable. To a dying queen and a vanished king. He was raised in secret, trained in 7 arts, and at the age of 17 he reclaimed his empire with only 3 knights. And a sword forged from star iron. I stared. 3 knights. 17 years old. A sword made of celestial metal. I'm about to turn 8 and I can barely lift a practice blade without accidentally smacking Ravik's knee like it owes me lunch. He sounds cooler than me. Like, way cooler. I absent-mindedly curled my fingers against the velvet tablecloth, pouting internally. Teacher Evelyn flipped the page with a kind of sacred silence, then added softly, "And as you already know, Your Highness." He was not alone. He had with him a divine beast. Rakshar. I blinked then smiled. Marshar. Well, that's one thing I apparently have in common with the legendary founder of the empire. The story goes, Teacher Evelyn continued, that during his early campaigns, Emperor Hadrian found a wounded divine tiger deep within the jungles of Nephrath. The beast had been pierced by a hunter's spear, and yet it lived. Emperor Hadrian tended to its wounds himself, and from that moment Rakshar never left his side. I nodded slowly. Yeah. I knew this part. I'd heard the rumors when Marshar hatched, how Holy Temple nearly fainted. How the royal beastkeeper locked himself in a prayer closet for 3 days. How nobles whispered about omens and destiny and reincarnation like we were all in some kind of cosmic prophecy soap opera. Rakshar was no ordinary beast. He was divine. Blessed by the gods. Connected to something greater. Something older than thrones and empires and snack budgets. They said he stayed by the emperor until his last breath. And then, he vanished. No grave. No remains. Just gone. Like the wind took him back to whatever divine corner of the world he came from. I turned toward Teacher Evelyn, frowning slightly. What happened to Rakshar? I asked, even though I already sort of knew. She gave a small smile. The kind of smile adults give right before they drop a cryptic riddle and ruin your peace of mind. After the emperor's death, some say Rakshar returned to the jungle from which he came. Others believe he lies buried beneath the palace itself, deep below the stone and marble, guarding the empire even in death. Guarding the empire. Even in death? I looked down at Marshar, sprawled beside me like a furry puddle of judgmental royalty. My divine tiger. My majestic companion. My extremely spoiled, highly dramatic, eternally hungry celestial roommate. He sneezed. And then yawned. Well, ferocious. Teacher Evelyn folded her hands gracefully. When your Marshar appeared, she said gently, many believed Emperor Hadrian had sent his divine companion's spirit back, to watch over the empire once more. I smiled at that. I mean, come on, it sounded cool. Like something out of a legend or a bedtime prophecy. But deep inside, questions stirred. If that was true, if this lazy fluffball was the second coming of Rakshar, then why wasn't he in the original novel? I mean, I've read it. Twice. Cover to betrayal-filled cover. And I remember everything. There were no divine beasts. No glowing tigers. No reincarnated guardians sent by long-dead emperors. Not once. No prophecy scrolls. No, oh look, a mystical creature is here to protect the heir plot twist. Nothing. So why did Marshall come to me? Why no? And what kind of power does he actually possess? Because so far I've only seen him eat fruit, nap in increasingly ridiculous positions and once, just once, growl at a noble who tried to glare at me. Which was appreciated. But that hardly screams divine weapon of the gods. Unless the gods were very into dramatic naps and overripe plums. I leaned back in my chair, frowning as Marshall softly kicked in his sleep like he was chasing divine butterflies or celestial pigeons in a dream. I was deep in thought, halfway down the rabbit hole of, what if I'm actually part of some rewritten divine prophecy and the novel forgot to inform me? When, Sir Ravik. The shout cut through the study like a sword through silence. A young knight burst into the room, breathless, his armor clinking, panic clear on his face. It's an emergency, he huffed. I blinked, my heart already dropping like a stone. Ravik stepped forward instantly, his entire posture changing from calm knight mode to battle-ready commander in under a second. What happened? He snapped. The knight swallowed. A scout just arrived. There's been an attack on the northern border outpost. A large force. Trained. Armed. Possibly from beyond the Ironwoods. Ravik didn't wait. Stay with the princess, he ordered curtly, already halfway out the door. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled. Wait, what? What do you mean attack? The knight looked at me, clearly torn between protocol and panic. Forgive me, your highness. The emperor will be briefed shortly. But if this is what it seems, he may ride out by sundown. I stared. The words barely made sense in my head. Going to war. I wanted to run to him, grab his cloak, cling to his arm and beg him not to go. But I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. My heart thudded. A quiet, aching echo in the vast silence of the room. I pressed a hand to my chest, willing it, pleading, for this to be nothing. Just a border scuffle. Just drills. Just bravado. Just nothing. Please. Let it be nothing. But deep down, in that strange, shivering part of me that always knew when things were about to change, I felt it. This wasn't a drill. It wasn't nothing. It was huge. It went on the whole day. Nobles arrived in waves, cloaks flaring, boots echoing against marble. Their faces drawn, voices tight with urgency. Grand Duke Regis stormed through the west corridor, and Grandpa Gregor's cane clicked faster than usual as he muttered something to a red-robed tactician. Advisors. Generals. Strategists. Battle mages. Messengers with wind-burned cheeks. All of them surged into the council chamber like someone had set fire to the Empire's map. And honestly, they might as well have. Because the whispers had changed. No longer quiet. No longer speculative. Louder now. Sharper. Clearer. War. Real war. Outside my chambers, the palace buzzed like a hornet's nest kicked in the ribs. I could hear the difference, the shift. The palace no longer sounded like a place where people lived. It sounded like a place getting ready to defend itself. Through the crack of my half-open door, I saw maids rush past, skirts swishing, hands clutching scrolls and sealed letters like lifelines. Gods above, who would have thought Iarthine would attack us? One whispered. I heard they crossed the borders with siege weapons, another hissed, glancing over her shoulder. They came through the Ironwoods, a third murmured. No one's done that in over a decade. And then, the last one in a voice barely more than a breath. They say His Majesty might lead the march himself. Each word cut deeper. I sat motionless by the window, hands clasped together too tightly. The blood had long since stopped flowing to my fingers. Behind me Morella stood still, unnaturally still. I could hear the rustle of her dress when she shifted, just once, like she couldn't bear to stay silent but didn't know what to say. Nanny didn't speak at all. She stood behind me, arms crossed, face set. Her silence wasn't indifference. It was fear dressed up in discipline. And I couldn't breathe properly. The air inside the palace was changing. The walls, the very stone of them seemed to know. Something bigger was coming. Something vast and terrible. And I hated that I couldn't stop it. Then a soft knock broke the stillness. A maid peeked in, pale and nervous. "Princess," she said, her voice careful. "His Majesty requests your presence." I was on my feet before she'd even finished speaking. Marcia rose with me, his tail flicking as he padded after me like a silent shadow. I didn't wait for Morella. I didn't wait for Nanny. I just ran, down the corridor, past startled staff and open scrolls and heavy armor being strapped onto Imperial knights. "Princess, slow down. You'll fall." Nanny called behind me. I didn't care. I just needed to see him. I needed to see Papa. I needed him to tell me, him, not some whispering servant or trembling noble, that everything would be all right. That we would be okay. That he would come back. The great palace doors loomed ahead, open now, and through them I saw the chaos of preparation. Dozens of knights lined up in polished rows, shining steel and white capes fluttering in the wind. Horses were being saddled. Supplies loaded. Squires ran in every direction like wind-blown leaves. Grand Duke Regis was issuing orders. Ravik stood by the barracks, already suited in war armor, his blade sheathed but ready. And at the center of it all was him. Standing tall in black and crimson, his cloak billowing like a war banner, his eyes scanning everything with that unshakable fire he always wore before something serious. I ran to him, ignoring every shout behind me. "Papa!" He turned instantly. And when I threw myself into his arms, he caught me like he always did, firm and steady as if nothing in the world could shake him. "Papa!" My voice wobbled. He knelt before me, his gloved hands warm against my arms. "Were you worried, sweetheart?" I nodded, lips trembling. "Are you going to?" I couldn't finish. He didn't make me. Instead, he reached up and brushed a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Lavinia," he said gently, "there is nothing I will ever hide from you. You've grown too wise for that." I held his gaze, willing myself not to cry. He exhaled, one deep breath, and continued. "The southern border is under threat. A cowardly kingdom tried to break through our defenses. Our soldiers lie wounded, and some won't return to their families." My chest tightened. "I have to go. To protect what's ours. To protect our people," he said. I stepped closer and wrapped my arms tightly around his neck. "Then please, please come back soon, Papa." He pulled me in, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Of course." And then a chill ran through the courtyard. Not from wind. Not from fear. But from him. The Emperor, my Papa. The man the world feared. He stood up and his voice changed, colder, sharper, wrapped in iron. "And when I return," he said with a glint in his eye, "I will bring back a gift for your 10th birthday." I blinked. 10th. That's years away, Papa. He smiled. Not gently, but like a man ready to wage war for the sake of his daughter's smile. I stared up at him, stunned, quiet, and unsure whether to be flattered or deeply concerned. He looked down at me, eyes softening just enough to let the warmth show through the steel. "And maybe then," he added with a dangerous kind of tenderness, "the world will finally understand exactly who we are. And who you will become." There it was again, that silent, weighty promise he kept pressing into my palms. That one day I wouldn't just be his daughter. I would be someone. And just when I thought we were done with the epic declarations, he pivoted straight into Papa mode. "Until then," he rumbled, adjusting my hair, "I hope my dearest daughter will learn how to wield a blade. When I return, we'll duel." My mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Oh great. Fantastic. I just got assigned a war as homework." I stared up at him, this towering, maddeningly powerful emperor I call Papa, and realized there was no room for negotiation. None. So I nodded solemnly, spine straight like a tiny soldier. "I'll do my best, Papa." He smiled, the kind that warmed and terrified in equal measure, and gently patted my head. "Good." Then he pulled me into one of those rare world-shielding hugs again, the kind that made me feel like nothing could touch me as long as he stood. "Your cousin's brothers will be here in my absence," he murmured into my hair. "And, you remember what to do if anyone disrespects you. If they defy you. Or try to tarnish your name." I stepped back, looked up, and let the cold settle in my eyes. I can throw them in the dungeon. He chuckled proud. Good. That's my girl. And for a moment, just a heartbeat of one, we were no longer emperor and heir. Just papa and daughter. Preparing for two very different kinds of war. Then Nanny stepped forward, clearing her throat, and handed me a silk-wrapped handkerchief. For His Majesty, she said. A token from the princess. I took it. My fingers tied the ribbon carefully around the hilt of his sword, and I looked up into his eyes. Then come back, I whispered. Before my 10th birthday. I want to celebrate with you. Together. He nodded, that sharp steel in his eyes softening just a little. Whatever my daughter commands, he said, cupping my cheek. That I shall obey. And then he turned, to the knights, to the gate, to the path beyond the palace that led to blood and battle. And I stood there, clutching my sleeves, watching the man I loved more than anything disappear into the war-touched wind. And just like that, it was confirmed. My papa is an idiot. Someone attacked a southern border. A border, not the capital. And he's decided to wipe an entire kingdom off the map in return. He's brilliant. He's brave. He's terrifying. And he absolutely has a temper. And maybe I'm an idiot too. For loving this terrifying tyrant too much. For clinging to the warmth in his rare smiles. For believing that under all that steel and storm he's still just my papa. I stood there, silent, as the gates yawned open and the cavalry thundered past like a rolling storm. I tried not to tremble. Because I knew what he said he meant. He will crush that kingdom. He will conquer it. And somehow, everyone will cheer for him while the world burns in his name. But what no one tells you is that conquering a kingdom doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. Years sometimes. Years without his voice. His warmth. His hand ruffling my hair or stealing my peaches when he thinks I'm not looking. And as the last of the military escort crossed through the palace gates, banners snapping, hooves pounding, I found myself running forward. I raised both hands and shouted with all the breath I had left. I love you, Papa. Come back soon. He flinched in the saddle. Just for a moment. But he didn't turn back. He rode forward straight into the horizon and vanished. And that's how I was left behind. In a palace too big, too quiet, and suddenly missing the one person who made it feel like home. Time moves strangely when you're waiting for someone. It doesn't gallop like a warhorse. It doesn't crawl like a snake. It stretches. Like an endless ribbon unraveling across the days, until you forget when it started. Or whether it ever ends at all. I'm 10 now. Almost 10. My birthday is a month away. 32 days if we're being dramatic. And I always am. It's been over 3 years since Papa rode out through those iron gates, fire in his eyes, thunder at his heels, and a promise on his lips. I'll be back before your 10th birthday. And now here we are. 32 days to go. No letters. No messages. No sign of him. At first the letters came like clockwork. Every week. Neatly folded. Wax-sealed. Smelling like iron and sandalwood. His words were sharp and soft in the same breath. Then 3 months ago they just stopped. No warning. No reason. I don't know if he's too busy conquering a continent or if something worse has happened. Now should I protest when he returns? Throw a tantrum? Launch a diplomatic guilt campaign? Unclear. After Papa left, my brothers moved in to keep me company, which really means watch me like I'm a tiny political powder keg wrapped in lace. Brother Soren, currently my official sword trainer, yes, that's a real title, took over Ravik's job of smacking wooden swords out of my hand and saying, again. Brother Lysandra, meanwhile, ended up joining Theon with estate ledgers and court finances. Theon literally screamed with joy. How I can date. And marry. And touch a tree. He's been skipping around ever since. It's weird because I think he is really dating. And Grandpa Thalion? He visited once, dramatically sobbing into my shoulder and declaring he wanted to stay forever. But since he's the royal healer of Nivali, he couldn't. My brothers laughed. Then Grandpa whacked both of them with my wooden sword so hard they limped for 2 days. Justice. As for me? I grew taller. Prettier. Louder. I may look exactly like Papa. But I am the female version of that man. The dangerous, elegant, awe-inspiring version. And I cannot believe how gorgeous I am. Seriously. I think I could conquer kingdoms with a hair flip. I spend at least 10 minutes a day staring into my full-length mirror in breathless admiration. Long golden curls. Crimson eyes. lashes like butterfly wings. A blue shimmering gown cinched at the waist like a portrait. Flowers tucked gently behind my left ear. Damn it. I keep falling in love with myself. You've been staring at yourself for more than 10 minutes, Brother Soren muttered from the chaise lounge, lazily tossing grapes into his mouth. Aren't you tired? I didn't even turn. I kept admiring the way my hair caught the sunlight and gave me the halo of an exiled moon princess. I said very seriously, brother. He hummed, chewing. I think I was a secret fairy goddess in a past life. One who doesn't recognize her divine power yet. Silence. Soren froze mid-chew. Marsher, who was lounging dramatically by the fireplace, his head now level with the mantel because he had grown and grew divine fangs, thank you very much, also froze. His ear twitched. A long pause. And then, ha 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 ha. Oh my gods, she said, it fairy goddess? Brother Soren nearly choked on his grape. He rolled off the lounge in full warrior armor like a dying swan, still wheezing. Is this a cult now? Are we worshipping you? I would appreciate a shrine, I replied coolly, adjusting a flower pin. With daily offerings. Marsher let out a snort that sounded suspiciously like a judgmental sneeze. Then he yawned, baring his slightly larger divine fangs, and went back to napping like a celestial rug with opinions. Brother Soren wiped a tear from his eye. You're unreal. I know, I said proudly. That's what makes me immortal. Brother Soren stared at me. Deadpan. Expression, unreadable. Like a marble statue sculpted by an artist who had just given up halfway. He didn't say anything. Not a breath. Not a blink. Just that long judgmental silence. Then, he stood up. Casually. Dangerously. Change your clothes, he said, brushing non-existent dust from his sleeve. I blinked. Huh. We're going to train. My soul shriveled. What? We just trained an hour ago. I cried, dramatically clutching the nearest cushion like it might shield me from my fate. He didn't even look at me. Just turned on his heel and strolled toward the door like some villain from a tragic sword opera. Since my dearest sister, he said sweetly, was personally assigned by His Imperial Majesty to duel him upon his return. He paused at the threshold. Smiled like a man with too much power and not enough hobbies. We should practice more. I nearly threw my jeweled slipper at his head. You're a monster. He waved cheerfully. I am waiting at the training ground, dear sister. And then he vanished, the smugness trailing behind him like perfume. I collapsed onto the chaise in despair. This man. This menace. This sword-wielding devil spawn. He's worse than Ravik. Worse. At least Ravik didn't smile while torturing me. I turned to Marsher. My last hope. My divine ally. My celestial co-conspirator. Marsher. I whispered. The divine tiger opened one glowing crimson eye. He growled softly, low, amused. Like he already knew. I leaned closer, eyes gleaming. You know what to do. There was a flicker in his gaze. A silent promise. Marsher rose, graceful, majestic, terrifying. He padded toward the doorway, muscles coiled, tail swaying. Then he bolted. I barely had time to smirk before. Thud. Followed by. Gah. And then. What the Marshy? Why did you jump on me? I peeked around the corner of my doorway, trying and failing, not to laugh. Marsher had tackled Soren to the ground. Full divine tiger weight. One paw casually pressing down on his chest like he was a wayward paper scroll. Soren was flat on the marble, his hair slightly mussed, his pride in shambles. Marsher gave the tiniest, sassiest growl. I stepped out and clasped my hands behind my back. He's just expressing his opinion about excessive training schedules. Soren groaned. He almost broke my ribs. Marsher sneezed in his face. Delicately. I smirked. Divine retribution. Soren glared at both of us. You're raising him wrong. I'm raising him perfectly. Marsher gave a smug tail flick and strutted back to my side like the fluffy war god he was, graceful, regal, and entirely too pleased with himself. Soren lay on the ground, groaning dramatically. This is karma. I swear. This is divine punishment for something I did in a past life. I got you as a sister. I smirked. You're welcome. The gods clearly thought you were too boring and needed some sparkle. He sat up slowly, glaring at me like I'd personally ended his bloodline. A sparkle that trained her tiger to assault her elder brother. Correction, I said primly, flipping my curls over one shoulder. Marsher acts of his own volition. I would never command a divine beast to jump on my annoying brother during training hour. Marsher yawned. Soren dusted himself off, muttering curses under his breath. I blinked innocently. So, we're still training? He stared. Deadpan. Unimpressed. A man defeated by fate in female drama. Yes, we are. I sighed and slowly turned to Marsher. Mars. He raised both hands immediately, eyes gleaming with victory. Say his name one more time and I swear I'll write to your papa. I froze. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He absolutely would. You monster, I muttered. I know, he said grinning. Isn't it wonderful when we're self-aware? I groaned, threw my hands in the air and flipped my hair with maximum princess flair. Fine. I'm coming. But if I break a nail, I'm starting a royal inquiry. He laughed and started walking again. You break a nail every other day and scream like the world's ending. Because it is every time, I snapped, marching after him with all the grace of a reluctantly beautiful warrior. Marsher trailed behind us, clearly proud of his performance. Honestly, he looked like he was judging both of us. Maybe he was. Training field later. The training field shimmered in the golden afternoon light, blades clinking faintly in the distance, and the scent of warm grass and steel filling the air. I had changed into my training uniform, a fitted white tunic with navy trim leather boots and gloves that made me feel like I was halfway to becoming a real sword fighter. Not that I'd admit it out loud. I tied my hair into a high ponytail, strands gleaming like fire, and stepped into position. Soren stood across from me, arms crossed, the sword slung casually over his shoulder like he was born holding one. I held the sword with both hands, the weight of it pulling gently at my wrists. It wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't dulled. It was real. It felt cold. Alive. Now, Soren said, stepping back, plant your feet. Don't lock your knees. Breathe from the core. Then swing with intention. You're not cutting fabric. You're cutting fate. Dramatic much? I muttered. I'm your brother, he replied. It's in our blood. I exhaled slowly, lifting the blade. My gaze locked onto the training dummy ahead. I tightened my grip, feet firm against the ground, and pulled the blade back, preparing for the arc of the swing. And then, I froze. That was not a bird. Not a horse. Not even Soren's weird grunting during warm-ups. It was low. Guttural. Wrong. Like thunder trying to crawl out of a throat. My head snapped to the side and my heart stuttered. Marsher. I whispered. He was beneath the old oak tree near the edge of the field, where he always liked to lounge and judge us with lazy divinity. But now he wasn't lounging. His massive body trembled. Claws dug deep into the dirt, carving furrows into the grass. His ears were flat against his skull, and his mouth hung open in a silent growl. No, a groan. A rumble that shook the earth but wasn't meant to be heard. His fur, usually pristine, flickered oddly around the edges. Like shadow and light were dancing too close to his skin. I dropped the sword. Soren turned. What the? Marsher let out a sharp, pained sound, his back arching unnaturally before collapsing against the roots. He wasn't moving. Soren, I breathed. Something's wrong with Marsher. Soren's eyes narrowed, all traces of playfulness gone. Stay with him, he said sharply. I'll get Lysandra. And then he was gone, racing across the field like the wind had caught his heels, urgency trailing behind him like a cloak. And just like that, the sun felt colder. The air too still. I'd never heard him make that sound before. And I didn't know if I ever wanted to again. Home info 0 comments. Ad library.